Hello, on behalf of the Boston Asian American Film Festival, welcome to the post-film conversation for Filipino Friday, featuring The Girl Who Left Home, Wherever we May Be, and Lumpia with a Vengeance. I'm Trish Fontanilla with BAAFF Filipinos. We're the co-presenter for our feature films, and I'll be moderating today's Q&A. So I am very pleased to welcome Adrian Alarilla, director of Wherever We May Be, Angelo Santos, producer of The Girl Who Left Home, and Patricio Ginelsa. Was that right? I think I made up your last name.
It's Ginelsa.
Ginelsa. I just added a little flavor like they do. It's Spanglish flavor that they do with in the news sometimes, who is director of Lumpia with a Vengeance. So for our conversation today. So welcome to everyone from their films.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Happy fabulous Friday, Filipino Friday.
Filipino Friday. Yeah, and it's also Filipino American History Month. So there's so many F's on this Friday that are amazing. So I actually wanted to kick it off for a question for everybody. If anyone's watched all these films, there's something that's a musical, there's a documentary, and then when I'm an action film, and they're from different genres, but the thing that I think ties together Filipino American films is I always see something about finding yourself, identity, and belonging. And I just wanted to kick it off and for everybody to talk a little bit about what it's like to promote your films right now, between Stop Asian Hate and just everyone being away from their families, whether they're in the Philippines or here. I'm just curious what it's like for your films that have this. I loved watching all of them. What is it like for all of you to be in these Q&As talking about films that I think are really hitting it home for a lot of Filipinos and Filipino Americans? So whoever wants to go first,
I'll go. I think now more than ever, I think you see that there's a need for the representation, right, for these kind of stories with some of the anti-hate statements that have been happening, and kind of like there's a void that films, especially about our community and our culture, is needed. And I remember I worked on a film called The Debut a long time ago. I remember in terms of Filipino American cinema, there was only, I could count with them like literally with my hand. There's only 2 or 3 at the time. And I think now I'm really proud of the fact that there are, this today proves it, right? You have a wealth of Filipino American films and a wealth of filmmakers who are determined to tell their stories. And I think that's what I'm most proud of. And now there's an audience growing now who are more open and not necessarily just Filipino, who want to know more about our culture and more about our stories. And what more, Filipino American History Month is a way to celebrate our history. Not a lot of people know about our history, and so these movies, it gives us us artists an opportunity to share some of those stories.
I love that. I was watching this movie, I had seen Shang-Chi, and I was like, all right, when is this together? Like major release this, because now is our time, because people are realizing that I think when that movie was being made, like how many Asians are going to watch this movie? And it was a major release, and there are people that are not Asian that are watching that movie. And so definitely with Filipinos, I think all of us have been asked, what is the audience for this? And it's like, it's not just for Filipinos. There's some deep feelings around all of these films that can resonate with a lot of different folks. Angelo, looks like you went off mute.
Oh, yeah, I actually want to add to what Patricio was saying. I think right now, especially the variety or diversity actually in each of our stories. I have a musical, Patricio's an action book or action comic book. Like, what? He's got a doc, and there's more to there's more Filipino American filmmakers other than us 3 out there that are telling different kinds of stories, and I think that's amazing because we all each have our own stories. Like one of the reasons why I became a producer on The Girl Who Left Home, because I knew I was never gonna write and direct a musical. Like, I don't think I will. I hope I don't. I'm not gonna say this. I would like to write a comic book movie eventually, but I don't think, that's hopefully that's possible now, you know.
Possible. It's always possible.
Yeah, you know, so I think that's also an amazing thing, is diversity in everybody's stories as well.
Definitely. I definitely agree. And I think one of the major points of my documentary is that all our stories matter. And I think it's something that, like you said, Angelo, it ties in with the story, the films in this program as well. For my documentary, it's very DIY. It's very much a labor of love. I think your Patricio, your film story like resonates so much with me. Like this was like just you and a bunch of friends like shooting, and it's kind of the same with me, except we're all over the world. And yeah, so, and most of my friends aren't really filmmakers either. So it's about, you know, finding your voice, and empowering yourself. And I hope that that's one of the things that people pick up with my film, but also definitely with your films as well.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm going to kick off some individual questions first. So Adrian, loved the documentary. I think as Filipino American who grew up in New Jersey, and my parents are from the Philippines, both from different islands, it was very cool to see this time capsule of I want to say, people taking videos of their food, time in the culture, and just the really like vulnerable, like honest moments that these people recorded, but also because this was like a friendship project. So I feel like people responded in a way that they would be talking to their friends versus like, I'm performing for a video. So I would love to hear a little bit more about exactly how many hours of footage did you go through, and then how did you get these into these really tight packages of all the different people and have them flow in together?
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely a really interesting process. I'd say I got an average of about 2 hours of footage per person. Some shot a bit more, some shot a bit less, but one of my major concerns when doing this was making sure that everyone was comfortable with the stories they were sharing, and just reminding them to be mindful of you know, what they're sharing. And I'm just so glad, like that you said, people were my friends were so vulnerable and so open with sharing their lives, and it was a constant process. So so when we were shooting this, we were just emailing or Skyping back and forth. Like Zoom wasn't really a thing yet then. And they would ask me, so most of the time they would say that, oh, most of my footage is really boring. Like it's just my everyday life here. And then I just say, oh, this is what I noticed about your story there. And just, you know, kind of going back and forth, and keeping it a conversation to make sure that we're able to represent each other to the best of our abilities. Yeah.
Did you have to, did they kind of do all this on their own, or did you send some questions for prompts or send some follow-ups? Because I feel like generalization for a lot of Filipinos is head down, work hard. You know, I'm not that, not that I'm not that interesting, but it's thinking about, again, work with Patricio, all these films I kind of watched in a row, so I'm like tying them all together. But it's always been interesting about Filipinos trying to do profiles on people, because they're always like, I don't think what I'm doing is very interesting, but here's this thing. You're like, your story is incredible, but we don't always know how to be the heroes of our own stories. So I was curious if you had sent some extra questions or like encouragement to get them to record what they did.
Yeah, definitely. So I sent my camera over to them with like not really a manual, but more like a guide, like just briefing them. Oh, these are some shots you can take. These are some questions that we can discuss after you're finished shooting and you're ready to have the interview. But for the most part, I let them be, take control of the camera and the kind of story that they wanted to say. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Angela, I've got some questions for you. So I'm a big fan of this movie. I was telling folks pre this, I'm very close to this. My dad actually passed away, and I was in your main character's role where I got asked to come home, and that's a whole panel for another day. But what I loved about it is just, I guess people have watched it. I was like, should we not do any spoilers during this? But the decision at the end and how the ending came about. But I loved that this could have easily just been, a drama without music. I mean, the main character is a performer, but what made y'all decide, all right, let's infuse some music. Let's have her do some music. Let's have the mom doing some like musical, make everybody cry, even if they're watching this movie alone. I would just love to hear a little bit more about what you did, why you decided to make this a musical.
Well, I can't really speak for myself in terms of, I came in towards the sort of, I'm going to say really right before we started filming. But I know Mallorie comes from a musical background. Mallorie, the director, writer, she comes from a musical theater background. And then when she went to USC, she did her thesis as a musical. And she's always wanted to write a musical because she feels that you get into characters' heads and you get their emotions better. And plus, we're Filipinos. Like, who has not sang at their family parties or played the piano? I never sang. I played the piano, but our parents made us do that. And there's such a plethora of Philippine talent singers out there, and it sort of just I almost feel it's like the evolution is like one of us had to make a musical, and it just happened to be Mallorie, and I was kind of excited, I love telling the story of how Mallorie and I met, where I'm a BAAFF alumni. I think my short Pamanigan was there in 2015 or 16, and in Mallorie's short thesis film called Mango Sticky Rice, which was a musical also, we were competing in one film festival, and she actually beat me. So that's how I actually got to know who she was. And then I kind of stalked her in a festival here in New York. And we kind of became friends. And then, she sent me the script. I kind of read it, and I was really honest with some of my notes, and then she accepted it. And then we just went on from there. But I feel like I think it's just the evolution of everybody of filmmaking, especially Filipino American, that a musical is necessary, especially, and it's a musical like musicals from, also we also grew up with Disney musicals where it's, where it's just like the musicals you just start singing in the middle of whatever. And I don't think a Filipino American film has been like that,
Was it ever, this is like both musicals and I feel like medical dramas, both very Filipino into me, but lack of representation for you as a producer, because for whatever reason, there aren't Filipino, leads. I always think of Broadway and like Lea Salonga and that kind of stuff, but there is this renaissance of music on TV, but not a lot of Filipino leads. For you as a producer, was there ever a question of, let's make a movie, but I don't know if the musical part will sell? Was there something around that you thought maybe wouldn't hit because of it's not the usual that's out there?
For me as a producer, that wasn't really a concern, only because the story hasn't been told in this way, and that's what I loved about it. I think every film is hit or miss, and I'm glad that we're hitting it right now. But yeah, and music also tastes are different, so it can be hit or miss. But I felt like, especially the story and then the songs with this story were perfect together, and that's what really attracted me to this project as a producer. And I'm very happy and proud of this film.
Awesome. So my tie between The Girl Who Left Home and Lumpia with a Vengeance is, before this, we were talking about my cotillion debut, actually. And Paulo Montalban was in your movie. And I was like, I was watching this right around, I feel like right around the time when my cotillion was. And so I'm like, oh, look at these like little Filipino like ties to different things of, because he looked so familiar. And then I guess this is aging me. I'm like, wait, he's old enough to be a Tito now? Like, oh no. But I loved his character in the movie too.
Yeah, Paolo's great. He was great to work with. And it's funny because I mean Paolo, ironic. What I loved about this movie, I discovered I had a lot of ties to the actors outside of the film. You know, and Paolo and I actually grew up in Jersey City. Paolo was the one that would be, his parents would make him sing at our family parties. So, yeah.
We should do a 6 degrees of Filipinos, and maybe we'll like figure out which Filipino actors and actors we put in the middle, and then we'll draw some different lines.
Exactly.
Thank you. So, okay, Patricio, like this is what I want to know. Where can I get a Lumpia dispenser? And are you mass producing these? Please put warnings before this movie to like eat as much Filipino food as you can. But I just love the idea of this, and just tell me more about this dispenser. And can I buy it off you? Is it going to be in a Filipino movie?
We're waiting for Hasbro or Mattel to
okay.
to invent that for
BAAFF,
us. But
distribute this.
Hasbro, if you're listening. But yeah, no, the dispenser was always something that from the original film, we're always wondering where does a hero get our lumpia? It's always fresh, and so that was kind of the challenge, is trying to kind of fix that mythology and try to think in some kind of crazy, weird comic book way. You know, so I'm glad the dispenser.
I'm just saying, I wrote after watching this film is like, is this real? Can I take this on road? Like next to my fanny pack, it'll be like a coin dispenser. Can I have a Lumpia dispenser?
I mean, just like Batman, everyone needs their utility belt. So that's our Filipino version of utility belt. I feel like the Lumpia dispenser has to be part of that utility belt.
Did you do a count of how many were consumed during filming? I was just obsessed with
well, let me set this record straight, right? So no real lumpia. All real lumpia was no real lumpia was wasted on set. It was always eaten, right? We would never waste really fresh lumpia. So any lumpia that was thrown or was prop was actually it was a really fake prop or a CG prop. But anything that was eaten we made sure we never wasted real lumpia on set.
That was a question submitted from the titas out there. You know, your cousins in the Philippines don't have food. Are you wasting this food? But yeah, so tell me a little bit. So this is, you know, crowdfunded sequel, which is, I think as a filmmaker, really cool. That means, you know, the fans wanted you to kind of move on, and hopefully there's going to be lots of these moving forward. But can you tell us a little bit about the journey from the original to now?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the original film itself was, you know, we started out as a bunch of Filipino kids in Daly City, California. We got together. We'd always make movies together, you know. And Lumpia, the original Lumpia was actually just a reunion movie because I got into USC and we figured we could probably make something professional. And just like what Adrian did, you know, it's a very DIY kind of homemade thing, and it takes a village to make any project. And so I used my my friends and to make the first one. And when we were celebrating the 10th anniversary of that original film, we decided to do a crowdfunder to see, I mean, not only to make the sequel, but to really test the waters out there if there was literally an appetite for Filipino American movies. I mean, this was 8 years ago. And surprisingly, our campaign got funded on the last day. And I think that's important to know, because literally, I don't think any studio would really greenlight a movie about a guy who throws lumpia as a weapon, you know, and we, the backers, literally willed this movie into existence. And, you know, we could have easily finished this movie quickly just for the sake of, finishing the film for the backers, but we wanted to make sure that we made a movie that was worthy of all their support. And in a way, it prevented us from giving up. I think it's different when you make a film and, you know, you always run out of funding and all that stuff, but then knowing that there was an audience waiting for it, it's kind of like the complete opposite of most other films, I guess, that that have the funding but struggle to find their audience. And so fortunately, the backers made it happen. And not only for this sequel, but they even crowdfunded our comic book. So this universe, we're calling it the Deep Fried Universe, DFU, I guess is what our fans are calling it. We've been very fortunate to kind of go beyond this film and hopefully more. You know?
That's awesome. So I know we're starting to wrap up some time, so I want to ask questions for all of you. Has everyone heard of the term rep sweats? Is that no? Oh, all right. I'm dropping some knowledge today. So I'm pretty sure someone will correct me, but I feel like we all take these. But it's the sweats that you get when you're either creating or about to watch something that you really identify with. So I think people are talking about this with Shang-Chi of Asian people being like, all right, please don't mess this up for us. Because if this goes wrong, and it was around Crazy Rich Asians as well, like if this goes wrong, we're not going to get anything because there are so few films that are featuring us. And I'd love to hear from all of you, were you thinking about that as you were doing creation? I know everyone's so close to these. It's like your film is your baby, but were you ever thinking, oh, this part, are people going to get it? Should I change it to fit for all audiences? Was there anything that was holding you back as you were creating these films of, oh, I don't know what my peers will say. I don't know, my parents are like, oh, I'm always I call my family titos, we call them the elders. So I always go, oh no, what will the elders think? What will non-Filipinos think? Were some of those lenses either by you or other people on your crews thinking about that as you created the films?
I mean, I could totally relate with that with our film because, I think we made a decision very early on to be really unabashedly Filipino American. Like we didn't really want to, like I knew already what my core audience was. And if anyone who didn't understand it, well, they could Google it, but I think it was very important to be authentic to our community and not having to, kind of make it easy for people to understand. And I think our movie is so fast paced and there's so many references inside and out that come in. Some of them comic book heroes. I mean, we're like the Shang-Chi without the Marvel budget, right? So it's kind of like, yes. I mean, when you've been working on a movie for 8 years and then it's very, a lot of people were under the magnifying glass of our supporters and our community who've been following us. You can't, you're always thinking about what other people were thinking. But in terms of the creative process, we knew what we wanted to do and we knew what kind of level of wackiness and how the kind of tone that we wanted to take. And if they didn't understand what Santo Niño was, or they didn't understand what this little inside joke, well, then ask your Filipino friends. I mean, that's what we took, and we didn't really care so much about what, which we try to not care, but try to ignore a lot of the noise outside our film.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like I think anyone that's done creative, when you've had someone that's not Filipino, they'll ask you something and like, but if things are contextual and the writing is good, then you shouldn't have to do like, oh, this means uncle. This means, if people are directing it to people, I think there is exposition in all your films, sometimes saying things with the terms, but if you're looking at uncle and someone says like, tito, you're like, oh, that's what. So there's like a little bit of education, but I feel like sometimes people get like, oh no, should I say everything with it so that people understand? But I love the do a little bit of homework. If you haven't been exposed to this, then maybe look up these different things so that people get a little bit more immersed in the culture.
Well, that's why in our trailer we have that one soundbite that says, "Oh, it's too Filipino," and we like because like we don't. It's that's what we get all the time, right? We're trying to sell our films right now. Like distributors will say, "Oh, it's too Filipino, it's too American." It's like, you can only care about the voice that you want to put out there.
Yeah, great. Angelo, Adrian, have any?
I want to say concerns, but I really wanted this to make sure we didn't miss. Actually, I wanted to make sure we didn't miss anything Filipino. One of the earlier scenes that I think a lot of probably non-Filipinos don't realize is when somebody passes away in our family, we have the novena. It's I don't think it's primarily Filipino, but it's something that's in our culture, you know. And sometimes there's a novena, you know, and other things too. I feel like I didn't want it to be forgotten or not told, you know. And if that's too Filipino, it's too Filipino. But that's our culture and that's our life. So I think that was my main concern.
Definitely. All that everyone said so far really resonates with me. From the very start, that has always been on my mind, and I'm sure it's been on the minds of my co-directors as well. Like, our experience is very specific. Like, we are Filipinos who grew up in the Philippines. We're state scholars, and we're supposed to give back to the Philippines, but instead we migrated and we went all over the world. So it's not necessarily Asian American, you know. It's hard to fit our film in a particular category. It's barely a traditional documentary film, and like when I was submitting this film to film festivals, like I was just like, oh, I don't know if people are gonna get it, but I'm so glad that BAAFF gets it, and it's such an honor for me to be part of this, for our little film to be part of this program with such heavy hitters as The Girl Who Left Home and Lumpia with a Vengeance, who had such success in other major film festivals in the country. So I just wanted to say thank you. It's such an honor and a blessing. Yeah.
That's awesome. So my Zoom went out as Angelo was finishing. So first thing, Angelo, I hope there is in a repertoire of actresses moving forward. I hope Dinaguan monologue is something that people audition with, because I wrote that down too. Speaking of like defining,
that
like,
was probably one of the hardest scenes to film, because it's like you had to just get it, because it's Dinaguan.
And then once the Dinaguan drops, like how many times can you do a take of that? Because that'll just get everywhere. And then Adrian, it's really funny because you say that it's specific, but as someone that's Filipino American, it was really interesting. I almost forgot that you all felt the need to give back, because I just always feel like maybe it's, you know, in first gen, maybe it kind of lessons move as you go on, but the idea of like, I always feel like I need to pay it forward in some way back to the Philippines, even though I didn't grow up there. So whether it's supporting family members in the Philippines or just doing work that makes family proud, I feel like that's, you know, there's more that resonates there. And speaking of, you know, different audiences, I think a lot of different families, immigrant families, or just families that have had pressure of, you know, make something of yourself so that, you know, something good happens down the line. That's, you know, that resonates with more people than you think. But thank you all. I have so many questions. I tried to sneak in all my like things with everybody. Thank you all so much for participating in this Q&A. But that's all the time we have. And if anybody has questions, these folks, follow them on social, stalk them, see what their next projects are. So along with BAAFF, along with a recording of this conversation, will be available through Sunday evening. And an extended run of our shorts will be available through November 1st. So visit artsemerson.org for tickets and for more information. These films are up for Audience Choice Awards. So please cast your audience ballot by clicking on the button on the bottom of your screen in the previous viewing window, and let us know how much you loved all of these films. And I want to say thank you again for everyone that joined us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.